how do you establish connection with integration services? That is what we are going to see in this video. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the integration services series where we are going to discuss about how do you establish a connection with integration services. My name is Mukeshkala. I am a 4 times UiPath most valuable professional, certified solution architect and an advanced RPA developer. On the screen, you see my LinkedIn details. Feel free to connect with me on the LinkedIn and I would be happy to be part of your network. Also, we have a small WhatsApp community where along with me there are other developers. So at any point of time you have any issues or you have any doubts, any error which you are facing, you can just post in the WhatsApp group and people are there to help you. Also, whenever there is a new video which is uploaded on the channel, you get a direct notification on your mobile phone. Okay, so feel free to join the WhatsApp community as well. And lastly, in case you are coming to the channel for the first time and haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next video in the same playlist, right? Having said that, let's get started. Okay, so in this playlist we are covering the basics of integration services, right? So in the previous video we have already seen what is integration services, why it is important, what are the core components, how do you launch it. In case you haven't already watched the previous video, I would request you to please watch the previous video, get your basics sorted, and then you would understand more about what we are doing in this video. Okay, before getting started, let's have a quick recap that what exactly we have already covered in the previous video. So what we have seen is we have something which is called UiPath Integration Services, which allows us features like simplified integration, API with UI automation, simplified security, enhanced data access, and event-based triggers, right? So these were some of the features which integration services was providing to us. We understood that there are 3 main components: connector, connection, and triggers. Today in this video we are going to discuss about the connectors. We are going to establish a new connection. That means we are going to use the connectors. Okay, so these are the 3 main components which we have already discussed. Lastly, we have also seen a example use case that how integration services was able to handle a complex requirement just by creating integration with SAP, Excel, OneDrive, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Slack, and all of that together just by using the existing built-in interfaces, right? So with all these background of integration services, now it's time actually to go and create an integration service. That how do you actually create a connection? Okay, so now before we go and we talk about how do we establish a connection, there are a few things as a background which we all should know. Then we'll go back to the integration service and we will try to do a hands-on on this. Okay, so first thing is to establish the, let me just put a laser pointer. To establish a connection, we need to have the automation cloud account, which we have already discussed. We have to navigate to the integration services, right? In there we would have something which is called connector tab. We can use the search functionality, right? This is what we have already discussed. Next, we just have to follow the authentication process which that connector would allow. Okay, so as we have already mentioned that most of these connectors actually follow the same kind of stuff. First you need to authenticate, then you need to create a connection, you need to provide the details and use it in your automations, right? But when you actually trying to do the authentication, right, integration services has different kind of authentication with different security protocols such as OAuth, right? So different integration services might have different security protocol. So the first thing is you need to authenticate your UiPath current cloud instance to connect to that integration services with something which is called the security protocols. Okay, we'll discuss it all of it in the practical examples as well, but please bear with and try to understand the theory. Okay, one important thing is it's not like that once you have authenticated a service or once you have authenticated a third-party application, you are done. You as a developer always has an option to create, edit, modify and delete any of the connections. Okay, sometimes when you are working in your company, or maybe if you are already working in a company, right, or in your organization, if you want to use integration services, you might need your IT admin guy to provide you those accesses. So for example, there is a company which is using ServiceNow. You as an RPA developer want to utilize ServiceNow into your automation. So you need to request the ServiceNow guy to enable those settings into the ServiceNow so that your robot can integrate from integration services. So that means that your IT team must provide you the relevant privileges to connect to that. If you are working on cloud in community edition, you have all the admin accesses, you can do all of these things, right? Lastly, for each and every connector whichever you use, what UiPath has done is they have given you something which is called a connector documentation. Depending on what kind of connector you are using, you might have a different kind of documentation which you can read, get all the details, and that will help you to build the connection in a more better way, right? So these are the something which are required to establish a connection. Now, some additional information I want to give you about OAuth and the application registry. Okay, so whenever we talk about protocol, we talk about this guy which is OAuth. People who are coming from the API background, they would understand that OAuth is a security standard protocol for secure authorization in the modern application and the website. In context of UiPath Integration Services, OAuth will allow the third party application to user resources such as robot workflow without revealing the user's credentials, right? So for example, if I am using Gmail, right, and now my Gmail has to connect to a robot via integration services, so integration service or Gmail are not going to share my actual credential, they are just going to connect via a security protocol which is called OAuth, right? By using this, the user grant permission to the third party application to access their resources. Now, whenever let's say I am going to connect to my Gmail, I am going to connect to my Google Drive or Zoom or Slack, at that time I do not have to share my actual password. Rather, what would happen is we are going to use something which is called OAuth, and that generate an access token. That token is not your password, but that token is specially meant for that application to connect, to send and receive the data. Why do we use it? Because it improves the security and user control as well as a better integration with third party application, right? So now whenever during the integration you heard this term OAuth, just don't feel alien that what exactly is this, right? This is just a security protocol, right? The second thing which you would heard is something which is called an application registry, right? Application registry is a central repository that stores information about the application and the services. Okay, very simple thing. Now in context of the integration services and ServiceNow, the application registry is the place where endpoint for the external clients are registered and managed, right? The same thing which I given you an example. So for example, you want to create an integration service with ServiceNow. ServiceNow is an enterprise application. You went to the ServiceNow IT manager and you told them that, hi Mr. Manager of IT, I want to connect to the ServiceNow. Now the ServiceNow manager will have to create some endpoints. They will give you some endpoints like www.servicenowxyz.com, and that they will give it to you, and that you can use again in the integration services. So that endpoints where that external application is registered is called something which is called application registry. Endpoint is a URL that exposes a specific service or a resource, right? It can be a resource like ServiceNow, or it can be a service like just grant that access, revoke the access, right? Like that. To create an endpoint to the external client, we must navigate to the ServiceNow and create an entry for the appropriate details. By registering and managing the endpoints, organization can ensure that only authorized clients have the resources, improving security and control. Okay, so enterprise customer, big customer, some clients will prefer giving you something which is called endpoint, right? They won't give you the direct access, rather they would give you an endpoint. So what is the benefit of the endpoint? The IT manager of that application can actually control that this endpoint only get the view access, or this endpoint only get the read access, this endpoint only get the write access. So they can control this thing by just tweaking the endpoint and not providing the access to the complete application. So two things which you should hear across when you are dealing with integration service is OAuth and the application registry, right? Please bear in mind that these concepts are important, because when you actually connect to integration services, you would listen these terms, and then that time you should not feel that, hey, what is an application registry or what is an OAuth, right? So with all this knowledge, let's go back to the integration services and try to build some of the services. I would request you guys to follow along with me so that you also have a better understanding. Okay. Okay, so I am back to my browser, and let's start by going to the same place, which is cloud.uipath.com. We have already discussed that in the previous video, that where do we find integration services, right? So I'll just log into my account, which is this one, which I'm using, tutorials by mukeshkala @gmail.com, right? So this is my community account, and I am going to use the same account to do all of the integration services. Please follow along this tutorial so that you also have the same automation at the end of this video. Okay, cool. So we'll just wait for this guy to fire up, and here it is. Okay, so I'll go to this 9 dots. We have this guy which is called the integration service, which is available here. I click on that, and that opens the integration service for me. Okay, so now let's define a use case. Okay, today I gave you a requirement that you have to read the data from Google Sheets. Okay, let's start with a basic use case, that I have a Google Sheet with me, and my use case is I want to just read the data whichever the business will put into the Google Sheet, right? It can be a sheet which is shared across a lot of business people, right? They are putting their expenses detail, they are putting their any information with it, and you have an automation which will run and which has to get the latest data from the Google Sheets, right? So first of all, let's go to the Google Sheets, right? So this integration service is ready, but let's create the source data. Okay, I'll go here and I'll search Google Sheets. Okay, Google, I'm using Google Sheet because all of us can utilize Google Sheet there, right? So you have this Google Sheet which is available. Just use the use your existing account of the Gmail, right, which you want to use the Google Sheet, right? And I'll just call this as tbmk underscore integration service underscore data. Okay, so I call this as tbmk underscore is underscore data, so that when we are reading the sheet, we know that which sheet we have to read. Okay, now here I want to put some data which we want to read, right? So let's say there are a number of users who are putting their expense information here, name, expense, and maybe category. Okay, you can think it of any use case where you have asked the business to put their information here, and the robot is supposed to read that information. That is again part of your RPA. Okay, so now here name, expense, right? So I'll just maybe zoom it. So what I'm going to do here is I'll say that the name is Mukesh and the expense is 10,000. Let's say this was for travel. Okay, now then I have another guy who is, let's say, Iron Man. He have an expense of 5,000. That is for, let's say, food. Okay, and then we have something which is called Hulk, which has an expense of, let's say, 5,000, and I would say this is for grocery, right? Anything, right? You have some kind of data which the business is uploading. It can be receipt, invoice, anything, right? You can think of if any of the data, right? And lastly, I'll say that there is something which is called Spider-Man, who has an expense of 4,000 rupees, and maybe for web development. Yeah, okay, so these are the expenses the employees are putting into your sheets, right? So this is a Google Sheet. Now just imagine, if you are not using integration services, you have to dynamically read this data. You might have to do, let's say, a connection first to the sheet, or maybe you would use some kind of APIs to connect to Google. The other way would be that you would come to this URL, you will open this, you will read this data maybe via data scraping, right, and then use it in the automation. Or you would like to go here, file, save this as an Excel, read that Excel and then do the data, right? Those are the methods, but that takes a lot of time and lot of development efforts. Let's start with very basics. Try to read this data into my UiPath Studio. Okay. So now in the integration services, this is the sheet which we have created, right? Please comment down that input created in the comments so that I understand that yes, we all have the input file ready. Okay. It can be any data. Now in the integration services, if I go to the connectors, right, this is Google Sheets. So I can just go here and I search Sheets, and you see that I have got something which is called Google Sheets, which is available here. Now I can click on this guy, which is Google Sheets, and it is a straightforward implementation that how do you want to connect. But first let's go here and try to connect to the Google Sheets. It's very simple. I click on that button, connect to Google Sheets. Most of the integration services will behave like this, right? Now it is asking me, Mukesh, you are connecting to this, which folder you want to connect? Remember the concept of folder which we discussed in the previous video, right? Same concept I want to create in the my workspace. Okay, I just say connect. Now what is happening, there would be an authentication, the concept of token, which would be set up between UiPath and the Google. Both of them are the different companies. UiPath to continue for Google Drive, which one you want to utilize? I want to utilize this, right? Now it is saying that by doing this you are giving all these accesses. You can click on continue. UiPath has already some accesses. I might have already done it, so it's saying that I already have the access. Make sure that you trust UiPath for the Google Drive. I say yes and I say continue. Your integration is loading, right? I am connected to Google Sheets, and this connection is made by just using simple clicks. Same way you can connect to any service which is available in that catalog, right? Now the funny part or the good part, right? We can create a trigger. We haven't created a trigger this time. We are just trying to connect and get the data, but we'll discuss about triggers, right? We'll park that for a while. If I go to the activities, it says that now with this trigger you can actually do all these stuff. You can create a robot or you can run a robot whenever the sheet is created, cell is updated, spreadsheet is updated, this and this, right? So all of this is available for you here, and the connection is also here, right? And that completes creating of this connection, right? Now I told you that every connector has something which is called a documentation. So you see here in the Google Sheet you have something which is called read the documentation. I click on that and it opens the guide that how do you use the Google connector, what is the authentication and all those stuff, right? So here this is the data. I connected this cloud, which is the my workspace. I created a connection to my tutorials by Mukeshkala to the Google Sheet, right? But till this time I haven't told it that which sheet I want to read, right? That I want to read TBMK integration service data. I want to read the data from this sheet one, right? All of this we haven't specified because Google Sheet you can have multiple data, right? People keep on coming, adding the data here, removing the data, right? All of that is happening in the Google Sheets, right? Where do we specify all of that data? That we will do in the automation, right? So I hope you guys are able to follow along. You have the source data. We connected our integration service to the Google Sheets. Now the third step is let's go to UiPath and try to fetch the data using the integration service from the Google Sheets. Okay. If you are able to follow along this point, please comment down connection created so that I understand that you guys are successfully able to connect to the integration services. Okay. Okay, so now with both of these, let's now go back to the UiPath Studio, try to create an automation project and use all of this into our existing project. Okay, so I'll go back to my UiPath Studio. I'll go here and I'll create a new process. Okay, I will call this as TBMK, which is the channel name underscore integration services, and then I'll put one more underscore and I say read sheets. Okay, and this I will say integration service read Google sheet data, right? Very small thing, and I'll say create. Okay, meanwhile this solution is loading, right? The experienced developer who know that yes, whenever we have to start any automation, we have to add the dependencies, we will get activities, drag and drop it, right? All of that still you can do. But as UiPath is continuously evolving, right, there are a lot of new updates which are available into the product, right? So as a developer, it is important for us to utilize those smaller things to get and do the development quickly, right? And that's what we are going to see here. I'm going to show you one quick thing also, right? So in the project, if you see here, as of now the dependencies are only for Excel, email, system testing and this, right? Today I want to read the data from Google Sheets, so I can go to the activities, right? Traditional way of doing this stuff. I can go here and I say sheets, right? I'm only getting this Excel thing, but if I scroll down, you would see that in the integration services inside the Google, I have this all these thing, right? Which is like add sheet, read sheet, triggers, read cell, write cell, right? All of that self-explanatory thing, right? Which are available here for you. And by the way, if you are not getting this, please make sure that in the filter option at the top, you have make this thing to available, right? Which means that you are asking UiPath Studio to show even the activities even if you don't have the dependency added, right? So I don't have any dependency added of G Suite or the integration services. If I uncheck this from the activities, if I just uncheck this available, you won't see this activity, then you have to manually add it, right? So make sure that it is available, right? To utilize these Google activities, one way is you can just drag and drop this activity into the canvas. The relevant dependencies would be added to the project and you can start configuring it. However, when you are dealing with the integration service type of project, you don't know what you have to do. You can always use the Autopilot feature in the UiPath Studio, right? Let's try to see that. You see at this top, you have this search button which says open the command palette. You click on that. And now you have all this option here. Just click on this button which says add activity, right? And now what do you want to do? I want to read the data from Google Sheets, right? It is showing you some of the activities that yes, you can use these activities. However, there is something which is called generate with Autopilot. I click on that. And now Autopilot inside UiPath Studio is going to write the automation for me. It says that read the data from the Google Sheet and store it in a data table, right? That's what we wanted to do. This looks good to me. And till this point also, if you see, no dependencies are added, right? So only dependency we have is Excel, email, system testing and UI automation. As soon as I confirm this, restoring the dependencies, now it would be adding all the dependencies which are required to do that connections, right? So two ways of doing it. You can drag and drop the activity that will exactly do the same thing. However, if you are not sure which activity to use, you can always use the Autopilot in the Studio feature, right? In one of the previous video which we uploaded last week, I have shared you what are the latest updates in 2024.8, and as an RPA developer you should be aware of that, what is happening in the product, right? Because I understand that most of us are working in enterprises, we have an older version, but you need to be aware what is happening, right? Because when you go to a new customer, new client, and suddenly you see a latest version, you should not feel alien that hey, what is it, right? So now it's adding the dependencies. It says adding the generated activities. It may take some time, but it's right. It's the same time. If you add the dependencies also, drag and drop it, it will take the same amount of time, right? So we'll just wait for this flow to get available. And you can see here the activities is available here for me, right? Good thing is, if you see now on the project, the dependency is already added, which is UiPath.gsuite.activities, which is from integration services to have this, right? This activity is read data from the Google Sheets. If you want to read about it, you can just right click on it and you can click on this guy, which is the help, and that will open the documentation for you, and you can read more about that, what this activity is all about, right? So it has opened my another desktop, so I'll just drag and drop it here, right? G Suite dot read range connection, Google Sheet connections, and all these details are available for you. Okay, and it is also showing you how do you utilize it. Okay, so this is one way of adding this. You can always go to the activities, and now since you have the dependency added, which is the UiPath.gsuite.activities, if you now go to the activities and in the installed, you would see that you have now got the Google here, right? So I should see it in the integrations, Gmail and Outlook, and then you have this guy, which is the Google. Into the Google workspace, what do you want to do, right? So I am dealing with Sheets, and then this is the same thing which you have got here. Whatever you want to do, just drag and drop it here, right? So I want to read the range, and just drag and drop this here, and that will generate the same set of activity for you, right? You can see this is exactly the same, right? So now I hope till this part you got it, right? You have the activity. Now here for me the connection is by default available, as you can see, tutorials by Mukeshkala workspace, and I already have the G Suite connection, right? In case you do not want to use this one, you always has an option to go here and create a new connection. I go here and I say add a new connection, and you see that again opens the cloud.uipath.com for you. It is saying that Mukesh, you want to connect to a Google Sheet. So let's say you want to connect to a different account, different service. You can still go here, click on this guy, which is connect it to the Google account, whichever you want to do, and then you can actually get the same set of settings, right? So you can pre-build a connection into the integration service, use it in the UiPath Studio like this, or you can directly start with UiPath Studio and from here you say add a new connection. All these things are exactly the same. Okay, so now this guy understand that okay, I have to read data from Google Sheet, I have to connect to this Google account, gmail.com. Now it's asking me click the spreadsheet which you want to browse, right? So now here you see there is some kind of a folder structure. I can click on that and it is showing me the same folder structure which I have in my Google Drive, right? So I have stored this Google Sheet. Let's go there. So I have stored this Google Sheet directly into my main drive, which was tbmk_integration service_data, right? So depending upon how you have managed your drive, you should have the same thing. So I go here into the folder, and here into the my drive, if I just double click it, it's asking me for the spreadsheet, right? And you can see that it is showing me all the spreadsheet which I have created, right? If you remember the weekly challenges we are doing, all of these are available here. And now I am interested to read this one, which is tbmk_integration service_data, right? In case you are not getting this, that means you are not selecting the correct folder from your drive, right? Better is just to store it in the main so that you are able to see it there. Double click on it, save, right? And now it understand that I have to go to Mukesh tutorials by Mukeshkala, that account, and I have to read this sheet. Now it's asking me, do your thing has header? Let's see. Yes, we have the header, right? Name, expense category, we have this header. So I say it to yes. What range you want it to pick? You can click on this drop down. Now the next thing is, it is asking me what is the range, right? So it understand that you go to that account, you have this spreadsheet, but in a spreadsheet I have sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. Which sheet to read, right? So that information is available here. I select this drop down and I say that yes, I want to read the data from sheet 1. Okay, and it will take that information. Okay, does my thing has header? Let's go and see this in the sheet 1. This is the header, so that header I want to utilize, and that's it, right? So by this information only, now I have all the information which I require, and whatever data I am getting from this read Google sheet in the properties, it's available into this guy, which is the data table results, right? So this data table results is now as a data table variable, because when you read the data you get something which is called data table, and that you are storing into a new data table variable, right? So now to showcase that yes, this information is available, let's try to use an activity called, let's say, output data table. Yeah, output data table to text, right? And whatever output I got from here, which is the data table result, right, I'm just printing it in a text variable, the text variable control plus k, and I'll say str underscore data. I just printed it into a text file, right? Why I printed it in a text file? Because I want to sheet the data into a message box. So I'll go here and I'll add a message box, drag and drop it here, and I'll just say data table, not this data table, sorry, my bad, str data, right? So now you could easily do the same automation by just using this activity. You will get a data table, and then you can do anything whatever you want to do, right? I'll save this, just go here and I'll say run the file. Now if everything works well, the expectation is this guy should go to my Google Drive account, read the Google sheet, get me the data, and show it to me in a message box. Okay, so the job has started processing, and you can see this is the data which I have got, Mukesh, expense category, blah blah blah, and this was the same data which I had in my Google Sheets. I say okay, and that's it. I was successfully able to read the data from a Google Sheet without doing UI automation, by just using the integration services feature, by just configuring these activities, right? So that is how powerful UiPath Integration Services is, right? Now once you have this data in here, you can use a for each activity to write the next set of automation. You can say that for each record I want to put it into an application, I want to put it into a database, and all of that you can still do, right? Now once you have this, the good part is you have already this connection which is created with your Google Sheet. Now if I go to the activities, and if you see here into the integrations, here integrations, Google Workspace, we were doing for sheets, right? So you already have a connection which is made, right? Now let's say I want to delete a row, or I want to delete a sheet. Let's say I just drag and drop it here, right? And this will exactly follow the same structure. You don't have to redo the connection and everything, right? It understands that you are doing the same thing. You always has an option, by the way, to change the connection from here. You can have multiple Google Sheets, right? You can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different Google Sheets. You want to copy paste the data from one sheet to another sheet. Whatever you can do with Excel, Google Sheets can be done from here as well, right? So I say that I want to delete the sheet. It understands that yes, this is the spreadsheet. What sheet you want to delete? So I go here, I select the drop down, and I want to delete the sheet 3. So let's quickly check. I have this sheet 3 here. Run the file. And this time, now with the help of automation, I am actually deleting the sheet in the Google, right? And please remember, all of this I am doing with the help of the integration services, which means that even if I close the sheet, right, which is open for the demo, this guy will still work, right? I can say okay, and then the next step after this was to delete the sheet. It deleted the sheet. Now if I go back to my Google Sheet, you can see that the sheet 3 is deleted. How cool is that, right? That with just using integration services, I was successfully able to connect to this, right? Now, some of the other example, right? So for example, let's try to send an email, right? So we are in this, you can see you have the calendar, doc, Gmail and all, right? Let's try to work on Gmail. You see, this is the Gmail here. So I create a new sequence here, right? We connected to the Google Workspace, so that gives us access to everything. So I go here and I say Gmail, right? Now let's say today I want to do something with my Gmail. One way is I always show you on by using the SMTP, IMAP and all of those settings, right? That is still there. But with this, let's say with Gmail, I want to send an email, right? Let's do very simple thing. Let's try to send an email. I drag and drop it here, and this is using the integration services. It's loading the connection, but remember, the connection which we have created is only for Google Drive. Google Sheets, right? We connected to the Google account, that's fine, but we have created connection only for the Google Sheet. We have no connection for Gmail, right? If you go back to your integration services, right, we don't have, if you go to the connections, we only have one connection which is for Google Sheet. So now the other way around is you drag and drop an activity here, you click on this guy which says add a new connection. Okay, and now that will again open your integration services for you. Connect to the Gmail. Yes, we want to connect to the Gmail. The same set of stuff, which account you want to use, tutorials by mukeshkala @gmail.com, that is the account. You say continue, and when I was using the IMAP or POP3, if you remember from the send email messages playlist, right, you have to create an application password, app password, generate something, put it into the credential asset, read the asset, then you actually come and do all of this, right? So what do you want to do? I'll just say select all because I want to do everything, and then I say continue, right? Depending on your requirement, you can select whatever you require, right? Just now imagine, if you are familiar with the use case where I was just sending an email by using a lot of stuff, right? IMAP, SMTP, going to that, using the connection request, port, server, configuring that big activity, using the activity, all of that is cut short by just one activity, integration service, right? So now it created this save as draft. Do you want to save it as draft, true or false? I say no, I don't want to save it to draft. Whom do you want to send an email? I want to send an email to my other email ID, which is mailmukeshkala @gmail.com, right? CC subject, right? What should be the subject? This is from integration service. What is the body, right? The body, I say if you receive this email, subscribe. Some branding for myself. Subscribe to channel. Okay, so I just wrote a body and I'm sending it to mailmukeshkala @gmail.com. I have an option to put the attachment, all of that stuff, right? Single activity. I provided no password. I did not share my credential. I just connected UiPath integration service to my Gmail. Let's go here and say run the file, right? If everything works well as expected, I should receive an email into my other account with this subject, body, whatever we have, right? You can see that the automation has started. That green indicates this connection was created, right? Email was sent in 6 seconds, right? Now I would say later, and then in my cloud, right? Meanwhile, the email is going. It might take some time, a few seconds, right? Now, if I go to my workspace, which is this guy, right? Integration services, I talked about the connections. One, Google Sheet, which we created here, utilized into the UiPath automation. The other one is a Gmail, which we created from the UiPath Studio and is available here, right? So you have both the options, and all of this is consolidated, available for you here. You can see all of that. You can go here, check the connection, edit the connection, manage the triggers. We haven't talked about triggers. We'll talk in a later video. You can delete it. If you don't want it, you have an option to delete, right? And now let's go to the other Gmail account. So you can see here, this is the same email which we just triggered, which was received a minute ago. It says this is from the integration service, tutorials by Mukeshkala. This is my email ID which I have mentioned. If you receive this email, subscribe to the channel. So without passing anything, I was able to send an email to my Google account from the integration services, right? And yes, that's pretty much I have to cover, right? So I hope you got the concept, and now you are armed with all these integration services, connections, right? You can do a lot of stuff with connector connections and whatever you want to do, right? There is something which is called triggers, which we will see into the upcoming sessions. But for now, I hope you guys are able to understand how do you read the data into the UiPath, how do you create the connection and pass the activities, right? Once you have the data, you are free to do anything with the data, right? So with that knowledge, I will keep you there, and let me know in the comments what use case immediately came to your mind that, hey, now I can use the integration service and I can create this use case, right? I would really appreciate your feedback on this video as well. Let me know how you are liking this series. Any more feedback, any more comments, let me know in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well, right? So with that, wrapping this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.